What is going on, all you awesome superhero aficionados? This is the Heroes and Mutants podcast, your number one source of superhero talk. I'm Nick with my co-hosts Eric, Jimmy, Ruben. Today we have a very special guest. Our producer Eddie is joining us today. Thank you so much for joining us today, brother.
What up, what up?
Hope you're good, man. Hope all of you guys are good. So we actually, this episode came out a little bit late. We were having some technical difficulties. We tried to shoot this episode a couple weeks ago, and the file ended up getting corrupted and lost, so we actually had to start all over from scratch. So thank you guys so much for being patient and waiting for us. I know everyone's asking us what we thought about the Batman and wanted our review and our analysis, so long awaited, but without further ado, here it is. So it's interesting that this film, when you talk about its inception and how it started off, because it was supposed to be a DCEU-led film, and Affleck was actually supposed to be starring in it. He was directing it in the very beginning, and then in 2017, he backed down from that directing job because he wanted to have a little bit more time to focus on the role and have his time more be about that. Then Matt Reeves had joined, and when he had jumped on the project, it was supposed to be about, he had to talks with Alfred about what they were going to do, what he wanted to do. There was some concept art that was actually just released, so we'll talk about that later in another episode. But as things started to develop and the story started gaining ground, he actually wanted to go a different direction with the younger Batman. And just given that Affleck is approaching 50, he was in his mid to late 40s at this time, obviously that was going to be where he was going to we figured that he wasn't going to be in it. And he officially stepped down in early 2019, and then Pattinson was announced as Batman later in that year. So with all that being on, it crazy because this was a movie that was like 5-6 years that it took to create, and how all the differences and what it was supposed to be, but it's here now. And the thing I wanted to talk about is all the influences, because I don't think a lot of people were really aware of all the influences. Obviously, we had The Long Halloween, which is probably one of the most significant ones, and there was actually even events that had occurred in The Long Halloween that were referenced here. Obviously, with Falcone talking about Bruce and him being shot and taken to Thomas Wayne, and Bruce watching from the stairs. So that was actually an event that happened in the Long Halloween. Definitely, we had Year One vibes. We had Earth One vibes also, and Ego was another significant influence, which is another pretty cool one to see, because that focuses on the psychological aspect about Batman and Bruce Wayne and presents them as separate entities, and how actually the Batman persona criticizes Bruce Wayne for not going that route and wanting to kill and letting criminals walk and go on to do, criminals like the Joker and criminals like Two-Face who go on to do crazy things. They get locked up, but then they just they get out of prison, or they break out and they go on to kill. So it really presents Batman in a way to where Batman is the Bruce Wayne persona is what keeps him grounded. Like, Batman is this animal and is this weird creature of the night, but it's the Bruce Wayne persona that allows that humanity to shine through, and that allows him to become that hero that we know and that we need. So interesting talking about the influences, but I really want to get into the film as a whole. What did you guys think overall about this film, the story, how everything's developed, and just from like the little snippets that, like, what you guys originally gathered from like the trailers, how everything played out? How did you guys feel about all of that?
Well, I had a certain level of anticipation for it, but the anticipation I had didn't really build, just because there's been so many Batman movies. So I didn't start getting super excited about it until like a couple of months ago, as I started looking into it a little bit more. All right, so for me, and I know not everybody's going to feel this way, for me as a lifelong Batman fan, as somebody who's been reading the comics and watching the animated series, this is the Batman movie, and I did not expect this. This is the Batman movie that comes closest to capturing what the comic books are like. It's the one that comes the closest to capturing the core of the character, and kind of capturing what I guess Batman represents to me, or what he's kind of always represented to me. Mm-hmm. I like that this one actually explores the detective side of Batman, and I think that aspect is kind of touched on a little bit in like Batman '89, or even Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight trilogy. but you never got the sense that he was the world's greatest detective, or that he was like, that was like his thing, that was his MO based on the movies that we got. This one finally kind of acknowledges that and makes that a big part of the story. I love the mystery. I love how central Batman is to this specific mystery. And for me, it's the first Batman movie that has the most, in a single film, it has the most satisfying character arc in a Batman film. Because Batman is portrayed at various ways depending on what part of his career you're talking about, and I think that's one of the interesting things about Batman. He's not the same person he is at the beginning of his career as he is in the middle of his career and as he is at the end of his career. I like that this one starts with him more on his mission, where he's more about vengeance and he's more about taking down Gotham's criminals. He's not so much about inspiring hope, and he doesn't even seem to be interested in being Bruce Wayne and the Bruce Wayne persona. In fact, there's only like, because I've seen this movie a few times now, there's only like 3 extended scenes in this movie where Bruce Wayne is actually present. This is the most Batman that we've ever gotten.
Yeah.
I would say by the 45-minute mark, I think it has more Batman screen time than most of the movies do have combined. So I like that for an early version of Batman. It kind of explores the idea that Bruce Wayne is not something that he's really even interested in being. It's something that's kind of an inconvenience to him, where his true mission is to go out and be Batman at night. But I like that the movie takes him on a full character arc, whereas like, as much as I love The Dark Knight, most of the character arc in that goes to Harvey Dent. It goes to Two-Face. And the Joker is kind of like the center of the chaos. This is the first Batman movie that since Batman Begins, that's given him like a full character arc, where he starts off as vengeance, but by the end he realizes that he has to do better, he has to do more, he has to become a symbol of hope to people, he has to inspire people in Gotham City, because it's very clear from the beginning, and it's explored in Batman comics, the idea that Batman kind of makes his own villains. This movie really tackles that in a way that I don't think any of the movies ever tackled that, acknowledges it as a flaw and allows Batman to grow from it. So what I like is that he ends up in a much different place. In the beginning, he's talking about how he is the shadows. By the end of the movie, he's out in broad daylight helping people out. At the beginning of the movie, citizens or civilians are afraid of him when he shows up to the rescue. By the end, he's kind of giving people hope, and like one of the best Batman moments on film to me is when he's helping people get to safety. There's a woman who's laid out on a stretcher, and she looks really scared, and she looks at him. He kind of gives her his hand. They have like a moment, and that's to me that moment when Batman grows from just a vigilante detective to a full-blown superhero. So I love the character arc, and I'm glad that Batman was the focus of this movie for once. And that's kind of a rare thing in a Batman. Even in the best Batman films, the villain kind of upstages Batman most of the time.
Yeah. What about you, Eric? What did you think?
I actually don't agree with Jimmy on a lot of this.
And it's for this reason. This movie, I think, is really good. I think it's a great movie. I think it works as a psychological thriller. It works as a detective movie. But for me personally, and I understand that it's the first time we see Batman as the world's greatest detective. And I love that, because I love that about the comic books. But it almost felt like Batman wasn't even like the main character in this movie. It was more like Gotham City. Gotham City kind of took over and was the part that shined bright. And I almost felt like you could remove Batman from this movie and it'd still be a good movie. You can put you can put Commissioner Gordon in there, right? Like, make him the central person in the movie and him like figuring out everything that's happening, and it'd still be a great movie. So that's coming from.
I'm gonna address that after, though.
Yeah, that's fine. But I want to say where I'm coming from too. I'm not coming from a huge fan of the comic books. Like, you guys know, like, I read some DC comic books, but I'll read like the mainline ones, the Killing Joke, the Long Halloween, like all those. I love those comic books, but I didn't read anything other than the mainstream Batman comics. The definitive Batman for me was like the animated series Batman. And because I didn't see what I'm nostalgic for in Batman in this movie, I feel like that's why I was a little disappointed in it. Obviously, it gets a lot of comparisons to The Dark Knight. I don't think that's a fair comparison. Just because of Heath Ledger's legendary performance as the Joker. And even that movie, I don't think Batman's a central character in that movie. I think it was really the Joker and Two-Face. Like, they're the ones that really moved the plot along. And I almost didn't get the same feeling from this movie. Again, it's a great movie on paper, and I recommended it to a bunch of friends. Some friends that didn't really even like the Batman trilogy, the Dark Knight trilogy, and they actually ended up liking this movie. But because they didn't need any of the backstory and stuff, and they really enjoyed it. I think it makes more sense to compare this to Batman Begins. And in that comparison, I would give it to the Batman, to this new movie. But yeah, that's just kind of my like face value opinion. I thought it was a good Batman movie. I don't think it's in maybe not even the top 3 for me yet.
Okay.
What about you, Ruben? What did you think about the story and the plot overall?
Well, I agree with both of them. Because I do believe Bruce Wayne had that Batman, I should say, had that transformation. You know how he started off as that badass vigilante, not giving it down, and then he through the middle he transformed. He starts realizing, because I think there was even a moment between him and Selena where like, well, aren't you supposed to be vengeance? And then like he kind of like backtracks from being called that, So and then like you say at the end, he finally is the Batman we all come to know and love. And then I agree with Eric where it's like, yes, it was a lot of Batman, what Jimmy was saying, but I agree with Eric where Batman didn't have to be in this movie. Like it could have just, Batman, Bruce Wayne, maybe a little Bruce Wayne a couple times, but main character, I don't know. I feel like Batman, he didn't have to be in this movie to make it a good movie, but I still liked it overall, in all honesty.
Yeah.
And like I said, the way it ended, it just has potential to grow moving forward. Like people compare it to the trilogies, but it's too early on for that right now.
Yes. Yeah. I think I want to add on to that too. When I say like that this movie could have been made without Batman in it. There's the, I don't know if you guys have heard the Indiana Jones theory, the very first Indiana Jones movie, where if you remove Indiana Jones from the whole movie still happens. That's how I felt about the Batman, because the Riddler still accomplished what he set out to do. Everything still took place only until the very end, when like Batman, kind of what you were saying, Jimmy, he comes to light and he actually like starts doing stuff, especially in the stadium when he's saving people and he's taking down the bad guys. And honestly, for me, I think that was the most exciting part of the whole movie for me. But because Batman, even through all the effort that he went through, all the pain, all the angst, all the feeling sorry for himself, everything still happened as the Riddler wanted it to. So I think it's a good movie, and you see the character development in him, and you see that play out. But when I go see a Batman movie, I'm expecting more of what I saw in the last like third of the movie versus what I saw in the first 2/3 of the movie. And that's a lot to say for almost a 3-hour movie.
For sure, that is.
I did kind of want to touch on that on the mystery. Okay, so the idea that you could take Batman out of this movie and have the plot move along doesn't make sense. And it doesn't make sense specifically because the Riddler's main motivation in this movie is that the idea about the Riddler, and this is kind of true in the comic books too, the Riddler is not a very physically imposing character. He's taken as a joke by most of Batman's other villains. I think the only time you've ever seen like a strong Riddler is kind of like on Harley Quinn season 2.
Yeah.
I think that was more of used to kind of parody what the Riddler actually is. So before Batman comes along, he's just a regular person. After he sees Batman, he gets inspired to put on a mask and go on a killing spree. So much so that he actually believes that Batman is actually on his side through most of it. Yeah. So if you were to take out Batman from this mystery, the mystery wouldn't have a reason to exist. It only
but that happens before the movie. Like, so Batman could be a background character that we never see in this movie, and it all still transpires, even though the Riddler was, like you said, like that was inspired by Batman and what he was doing. Everything still transpires as the Riddler had wanted it to.
Yeah,
more of his beef I want to touch on too, because I want to compare it to. I say I enjoyed the movie and I like it, and I know it was a TV series, but it kind of reminded me like Gotham City. Yeah. Or Gotham, the TV series show. You know, Batman wasn't the main character in that show. Bruce Wayne was there most of the time, but like it still touched on every character.
Yeah.
And obviously they were before their prime and all that, but I still felt like I was watching Gotham City
Yeah.
in a way.
There
And
might
that's
be a
why
way.
And it's
that's
also
why when I
because
think Batman doesn't need to be in it, that's how I feel. Like,
okay. But the thing is, the mystery doesn't exist without Batman. I
Exactly.
get that you
Yeah,
could
yeah.
argue
I agree
that
with you
you
on that.
could plug 2 random cops in here, but at the end of the day, Batman is a detective, and you could technically do that with any Batman mystery. Technically, Batman doesn't have to be the one solving the Long Halloween, but that's the most
That's true.
iconic detective comic. And also because the revelations are too tied to Bruce Wayne's personal history, that a lot of these revelations, if you were to plug in like a random Gotham cop, they wouldn't really have any meaning. The idea about the Waynes kind of being connected to the corruption and kind of being connected to the Falcones and possibly being involved in murder is kind of like another thing that's kind of used to move Batman's character arc along. It's kind of like a moment where he has to stop and realize and take stock of what he's doing and wonders whether his parents' legacy is actually worth fighting for and if his mission as Batman is worth carrying out. So if you took Batman out of it, the revelations wouldn't make sense. You wouldn't there would be no reason for the Riddler to be writing to a random cop, and a random cop wouldn't even be in this without Batman, because the only reason he writes to Batman is because he believes they're on the same side. Unless he was inspired by a random cop, but I don't think that it would make sense for the Riddler to become inspired by a random cop to kind of pick up the mask and carry
It
it
was
out.
inspired
I
by
guess
the
that
Also,
And it
that's
would
fair.
also be even less. It would make even less sense for the Riddler to be writing to a cop, thinking that a cop is on his side.
yeah.
Well, you got to think of the Zodiac, like real life though. That's kind of similarity there too.
Yeah.
Zodiac just wrote to the cops or detective straight up.
But
And I actually like comparing this movie to movies like Zodiac and like Seven. And I think it's more in the same category with those movies than it is with like other Batman or superhero movies in general.
But I think that's kind of, and I've noticed this, that there's like a big dividing line, and it's not like even a reflection on The Dark Knight, because I love The Dark Knight. I think that's a fantastic film. I think that's a great superhero movie. But The Dark Knight skirts a lot of what Batman is in so many of the comics in favor of pumping up the superhero, which Batman is a superhero, which this kind of story does get to, but he's equal parts superhero and hard-boiled detective, hard-boiled noir detective. And for that reason, I think that this one actually gets closer to what the core of the comics are. Whereas as much as I love the Christopher Nolan trilogy, he does change a lot of things in terms of, and this movie does change things too in terms of the realism and trying to make Batman more realistic. But I think it does it without sacrificing the Batman flourishes. Like The Dark Knight, that doesn't look like Gotham City at all.
No, it doesn't.
Argue that.
Well, I would say Batman Begins more so did, but if you look at Gotham City between Batman Begins and The Dark Knight, it doesn't look the same at all.
Yeah, but I respect what Nolan did, because the concept behind what Nolan was doing is each of his 3 Batman films takes place in a different genre. So he kind of modified Gotham City to fit the genre that it was in. So since the first one's more of like a mythic superhero origin story, it kind of delves into the fantasy of Gotham City a little more, whereas The Dark Knight is Heath inspired, Michael Mann inspired, like straightforward crime drama, which fits Batman also, but he kind of like modifies the city to kind of fit the tone of the movie. So I get that. But this one kind of like delves into the realism that Nolan did, but without sacrificing the things that make the Batman world Batman and make Gotham City feel like Gotham.
Exactly.
And because I think my favorite thing about Batman and what separates him from other superheroes is the detective work. Batman is, he fights. Yeah, he's badass. But what I like about him too is that he's smart. And I also think this is the portrayal where you most see the kind of intelligence, especially in the way that Robert Pattinson portrays him. It's all in the eyes and observations and the way that he kind of looks at everything. So for me, and this is the point that I was getting to, I've noticed that the more diehard of a Batman fan you are, I think the more likely you are going to prefer this to The Dark Knight, which is not to say that diehards won't like The Dark Knight, but I think, and I've noticed a trend, even if when you look at what's her name, like Grace Randolph or Chris from 3C Films, they both rank this as the best of the Batman movies. And I think it's because they're coming from a place when they're talking about like comic book accuracy and capturing the world and actually kind of doing the type of storylines like the Long Halloween or Hush that you typically see. Whereas most Batman movies kind of take from the same well. Batman Year One, which this does too. The Dark Knight Returns. And those are great. I love those stories, but those aren't necessarily representative of what a Batman comic book is actually like or what its long storylines are actually like.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I kind of like this. I do think that Batman's very central to this. I guess you could take him out, but you could take him out of any mystery that he's solving. But that's not. But that's who Batman is. He's a detective,
Exactly.
and I think they did a good job with this mystery of tying it to his family, tying it to his character arc, and making him the reason that this mystery exists. And I love that it kind of gives him that character arc of the theme explored in Batman comics, where in every Batman comics, gangsters, criminals, thugs exist in Gotham City. As soon as Batman shows up, he starts to clean a lot of that up. But what comes in place is all these freaks, these masked freaks, these psychologically damaged people. And I really like that this movie kind of uses the mystery to highlight that aspect about Batman, kind of confront it and force him to become a better Batman.
Yeah. Well, before we go on, haven't had a chance to hear Eddie's opinion on this film. So, Eddie, what did you think about this plot and this storyline?
I was listening, man. Fuck, y'all were doing good. Nah, it was fucking whack. Nah, just playing.
Go on, though, Eddie. What did you truly think about it, bro?
Nah, it was cool. It was good. It was a good movie. I like the detail the director put into it. You could tell he's a Batman fan. The way like Jimmy was saying it ties into the comics and stuff.
Yeah.
I thought a lot of people liked it though, because it just felt like they just were taking so many things to make it like hype, to kind of make it like tie into like nowadays, and I feel like a lot of people bought it. Like what Jimmy was saying about like Grace and all that, like they're pretty hype. So I feel like they were buying into. I feel like the director got into everything like the old Batman films. Like I feel like he took from Tim Burton's set, like as far as the practical things and all that, and I feel like he took from the way the Dark Knight was shot, like a very eerie feel, like as far as Gotham and everything. So I thought that was really cool, but I thought Colin Farrell killed it. I wasn't buying Falcone as that. You know what I'm saying? I thought Optimus Prime was about to come out at one point. I thought Catwoman was all right. She wasn't my favorite by far. I thought some of her lines were pretty corny, like when she was saying "baby" and all that. I wasn't buying it. I was not buying it. And then Batman. Oh man, he looked like he was about to go to Hot Topic after he solved this crime. I wasn't.
But why do you say he looks like he's about to go to Hot Topic? That I have to ask that question.
Because he looked like so emo with the makeup. Like, I really think they did that on purpose, like to make it like look even more emo.
This is the natural progression from Twilight to Batman.
Yeah, like like Batman has those eyes, he has the paint under his eyes on some versions of him.
Even in a lot of the like commercials and stuff that they like focus on him, like even when he's Bruce Wayne, he has like his hair down and he's almost pale and always sad. Like he's like your typical I know it's a meme now, but he's like your sad boy.
But
right, like,
but the thing is, I mean, Bruce Wayne is kind of a sad boy. But I think the reason, Bruce Wayne's a total sad boy. He's a brute.
He gets a lot of ass.
Yeah.
Well, he's completely damaged. Is obviously what they were going for.
But
he's a playboy.
The idea behind especially the way that they interpret him in this movie is his hair's disheveled and it's messy. He doesn't even seem interested in putting the cufflinks. I think that works because it's an early stage in Batman's career where he hasn't really gotten everything figured out yet, where he's not even about being Bruce Wayne. The idea kind of bores him. And the eye makeup is in every live action.
Oh, yeah. Batman. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The way they did it.
But the thing is, I think this goes back to Batman Returns, which has a scene, and this is one of the scenes that always turned me off.
It was weird. It was very weird.
Yeah, this is really weird. So there's a shot where Batman is talking to Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman, and right before he tears the mask off, it flashes away, and then it goes back to him, you see the eye makeup gone, and you see his skin.
Oh, I know.
right here.
Yeah, that was always
looks-
weird to me. Like,
it
I didn't
looks-
understand that.
Yeah, it looks
Yeah,
so
that's-
bad, and it looks terrible. So when he takes it off, you're like, so he
Yeah.
did that the entire time. I don't mind the makeup just because all of the Batman have to wear makeup. It's part of the war paint. It kind of like
Yeah.
gets you into that kind of feel.
Yeah.
Yes,
But the way he did it with like the hair strand down and like
yeah,
his head
because he's
down and,
because he's
like,
a disheveled
like,
because he's a disheveled Bruce Wayne because he's not really interested in that persona yet. I
And
don't
I-
think he's gonna be like that in the sequels.
He's like the
Mm.
football.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Okay,
Yeah,
Alright.
Right.
I agree, Jimmy. I don't think it's gonna be like this.
Bigger though. Do
Yeah.
you guys think he was even gonna get bigger? Because even when they showed that back scene, I wasn't intimidated at all. I thought he had to eat, if anything. Like I was not intimidated by that scene, and I wasn't.
He's still early on in his career.
Yeah.
He's got time to bulk up.
That's what they're saying, but then they're saying that he didn't want to even work out and stuff, and then that's why I wasn't even buying the scenes where he was beating down everybody and stuff. I'm like, man.
I'll admit that. I'll admit to that. I was not buying the scenes and I mean, Nick, you could probably talk more on the choreography of it, but in the end, like him like taking on so many hits, and I know he has the suit on and whatever armor plating, I don't know what's all in the suit, but him just like taking punches and just hitting back, like I wasn't that felt weird with like his body type.
They were trying to make him a brawler.
Yeah, and
Man.
what I wanted to see was more like Daredevil, like the series. Like
Yeah,
he's
exactly.
skinny, but I felt like that was just more believable when he would take on 3, 4, 5 guys at a time.
Yeah.
And so I'm with Eddie on that one. Like I wasn't buying his physique with what was happening on screen.
They were trying to make him look big, and it wasn't happening.
I mean, for me, it worked. I mean, because the suit is kind of what makes him look big. And I think this is interesting. My 2 favorite Batman performances are this one and Michael Keaton. And both of them are probably the 2. So Michael Keaton is skinnier. Michael Keaton is skinnier than Robert Pattinson, and he's also shorter.
Was he skinnier than Adam West?
But he
looked like...
I mean, Adam West was bigger though. Adam West was like 6'2", so he had to be at least 190, 180
I don't know if
pounds.
But when he's in the suit, he looks big. I mean, for example, when he's in that the room with the cops where they all kind of like want to unmask him and he stands up. He towers over the entire police force. He's like at least a head taller than all of them.
That was ridiculous.
They try to make it look so big. I was like, bro, there's not one cop over 6 feet. You know?
I know, but it's a comic book movie, and it's
I know.
Even Michael Keaton is cheated to look bigger in his.
Batman. Well, that's what the Batsuit was designed to make him look bigger. But
well,
before we go on to this topic, though, I was meaning to give my take on it because I was waiting to get to all of you guys. But I'm in agreement with Jimmy as far as the plot and the story and this overall feeling to this movie, where I don't feel that if you take Batman this whole movie is from his point of view. If you take him out, it's not going to be the same thing. And the whole thing with the Riddler wouldn't exist without the Batman. And that's the whole thing.
But did he catch Riddler?
The what?
No, he didn't catch the Riddler, but I don't really think that
like Zodiac
story at all, though.
Yeah.
Because the story is more about Batman discovering himself. And honestly, I mean, maybe he could have caught the Riddler, but this would have made it just like every other superhero movie instead of what Batman comic books are like. So I like that it was more of him kind of giving himself up. Batman still had to figure out what he was doing. Batman still had to figure out about that little incel group that he kind of put together. So and he's still the one who had to go and kind of evacuate people. All those people would have been electrocuted in the water, I think, if Batman didn't show up at that time. So I think that's good enough for this specific story. I don't mean that he didn't catch the Riddler. And I kind of like that the Riddler gave himself up. It adds like a creepy layer to his plot where he's so confident he can give himself up and it's not even done playing out.
Yeah, but my whole thing is that you can't, if he even goes to say too, like, we were such a great team, weren't we? You like, my power, I'm not physical, my power is up here, alluding to his intelligence. So obviously he thought that him and Batman were on the same side, or he thought that they were partners. So he needed him to enact his plot or to further achieve his plot or to get Falcone into the light, as he says. So I don't really agree with that mindset, that opinion that if you take Batman out of this film, it would have been exactly the same, or events would have played out exactly the same. And overall, I just felt this was the definitive Batman movie for me, just because there were things in here, and that was the thing that Jimmy, I really liked, and I really agree with what Jimmy said too, that it seems to me the people that I've talked to who really liked this film or thought that this was a really, really great Batman movie tend to be more hardcore Batman fans. The ones who don't really care or say that they didn't like it, they tend to be more casuals, or not people who have any kind of affinity or any kind of connection to the source material or this character as a whole. So I felt like that was a really great introspective on this movie too. But further talking about it, since Eddie had brought it up, overall, what did you guys think about Pattinson as Batman? Do you guys agree with those sentiments, that he was too skinny, or that he wasn't believable in the bat suit, or that whole Kurt Cobain aspect was not something that fit? Also, like, what did you guys think overall?
I think his frame and everything was fine. The only issue I had was that mismatched in my mind with what was happening on screen with the choreography. I think he looks fine in the bat suit. I think he can be intimidating, and obviously, like, I'm the video game guy, right? So I played all the Arkham games, and in those games you can play two different styles, and I actually like playing the style where he like strings people up and he intimidates and he scares and he does everything like in the shadows. And I wanted to see more of that and less of what the casual gamer does and just jumps in and beats up 10 people at once. And I feel like that is almost truer to who Batman is too. It's like he doesn't just go in head first into a gang like the first scene of the movie and just takes them all out. Like, he uses multiple gadgets and he uses his smarts and he takes them out, picks them off one by one. Like, that's in my mind, that's the combat style that Batman should be working in.
I actually understand. I think that what you're saying makes sense, even though I kind of disagree. I get where you're coming from on that, because this is not, I guess, what you would expect from this style of Batman.
Yeah.
And again, we'll know by the sequel what direction this was going in.
Yeah.
The only reason that I think it works here, and I think the main reason, is because this Batman is young and inexperienced, kind of brash, just like walking up and just knocking on the door and like pushing.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, like I think this is like his second year of fighting crime, and he still hasn't got things figured out yet. So I think it makes sense that this early version of Batman would be a little bit more brash, would be a little bit more rush in there. I expect in the sequels to have a little bit more of what you're talking about, especially with the video games, more of the tactical aspect.
Yeah, because him like up there with being the greatest detective in the world, he's also one of the smartest tacticians in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I didn't get a lot of that.
Yeah. I mean, we did see a little bit of an arc for that at the very end, to where he snuck in to the Iceberg Lounge and killed the power. So we're starting to see a little bit of that, but obviously with him being younger, brasher, unrefined, and also just filled, I think it's more so because he's so angry, he doesn't really think of any other option, or he would rather get into a physical confrontation with all these goons and henchmen as opposed to going the more experienced, nuanced route of sneaking in and becoming that strategist in that fashion. So
I also think it's because this version of Batman kind of like feeds off his own rage. At least the way that I got, like, one of the things that Robert Pattinson said is that in his performance, the way that he thinks of it when he's like going after is that every criminal is the person who shot his mom to death. So he has more of like, he's driven by this like pure vengeance and anger, and that's why he keeps calling himself Vengeance. I do think that if they do that within the sequels, and if it keeps doing that, then it's not going to work out, though. So I could kind of see the point, but I also think it works for an early version of Batman.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think Robert Pattinson did a good job as Batman. I think he did a good job at putting on screen what the director envisioned for this movie. I think he, like, what he was given in the script and the direction he was given by the directors, it fit the movie. I think he did a really good job at that. And ultimately, I see the movie as more of a Bruce Wayne origin story than a Batman origin story. I think he's gonna figure out where that balance is and where to go from there. So yes, having the weird sad boy Bruce Wayne was weird for me, but I think that's what they wanted to put on screen, and he portrayed that really well. And he portrayed the angst, he portrayed the anger, he portrayed all of that really well, and I definitely got that from the movie.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Ruben? What did you think about Pattinson as Batman?
Well, I don't blame it. I remember. I'll go back to like the original kind of question where I wasn't really anticipating the movie. You know, like I've seen him in Twilight, other movies. I haven't, or maybe one other movie. I ain't gonna lie. I haven't seen
Harry
a lot of
Potter.
his movies. Harry Potter. Yeah, there
Yeah.
you go. That one film. There you go. But then, so after that, I don't know how he was gonna, portray the role. I did, like I said, I didn't mind. I wasn't anticipating this Batman film. Like Jimmy says, like we've seen a bunch of other Batman films already, so I was like, whatever. When I know it's coming out, I'll see it when it comes out, and that's exactly how I played it. I got excited once it came out, just because like, who doesn't get excited when you're gonna see superhero comic book related stuff?
Mhm.
And so, like I said, I didn't blame it. I do feel like he probably could have been a little bit bigger, like Eric was saying, just because of the fact, like for more of the animated series or even comic books, where he does look bigger, and he does do more tactical stuff. And like I said, I don't mind how Patterson decides that he is. I just feel like nowadays I feel like they want to make more people out there feel related. Normally, like I said, people are all small, superheroes are all big, and who knows, maybe they were trying something different. But I do agree with Eric on the other fact where it's just an introduction to his, origin, where he hasn't figured everything out. And like I said, it has potential to grow, and he has potential to grow. So I don't mind it. I liked it, and like I said, I'm looking forward to see what else they're gonna do with it.
How about you, Eddie? I know you had your feelings on how he looked physically, but overall, his performance. What did you think about him?
I think he did good. I didn't think I don't think he was the worst Batman for sure. I think he did good. I think they were trying to pull more emotion from this film than probably necessary. But overall, he did good. I want to see what he does in the second film. Like, I hope he does actually like look like he works out and stuff and all that. But yeah, we'll see what happens.
One thing I wanted to say about Robert Pattinson, he has, for me, the best Batman voice, because he manages to do something that and Christian Bale, I think, is a really great Bruce Wayne.
Oh, I hate his Batman voice.
I can't.
Oh my god.
I mean,
His throat cancer voice.
Yeah, I even saw an interview recently with. Yeah, I even saw an interview recently with Kevin Conroy, and he was talking about the versions of Batman he likes, and he started talking about Michael Keaton and Ben Affleck, and then when he got to Christian Bale, he's like, he's a really great Bruce Wayne, but his Batman got really strange. See, I like Bruce, like him when he's like intimidating people, like, where are the others? And he's like in their face. But when he's having like casual conversations with Commissioner Gordon and that, like that, it doesn't work.
It was really the Dark Knight that took it over, though. Because Batman Begins, like his normal Batman voice actually sounds pretty good. But then when he gets to the Dark Knight, it's just like everything is so gravelly and so fucking freaking mumbly, like you can't understand him.
It doesn't convey. What I liked about Robert Pattinson, he has a gravelly voice that's a little subdued. Sounds a little bit like a noir detective, like they did in 40s movies, especially when they do that kind of voice.
It reminded me of Sin City.
Yeah, Sin
his
City.
Voice. Yeah,
totally. So I like his Batman voice a lot more. I like him and Michael Keaton's Batman voice the most, because they both kind of project this quality that has kind of authority to it without trying too hard. And I like the way that he plays Batman. Whether he's going to be the best Bruce Wayne is another thing, just because I still think that. I just rewatched the Snyder cut of Justice League again recently. I think Ben Affleck is probably the best Bruce Wayne, with the Christian Bale pretty close to him. So I think it's
George Clooney.
Yeah.
Even George Clooney, hands down.
Okay, George Clooney's not a bad Bruce Wayne. George Clooney ain't a bad Bruce Wayne either.
Batman, that's a
whole other story.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing with these Batman actors. Sometimes they'll nail like the Bruce Wayne aspect and totally fail Batman, and sometimes they nail Batman and totally don't get Bruce Wayne.
Yeah,
so I think this one's a more of like a Batman performance.
Yeah.
I liked his voice, and that's a big thing. His voice and his facial expressions, and the look of the cowl,
and just the eyes. Like anytime, I really think they did a good job with show don't tell aspect to where you understood what he was thinking or what was going in his mind just by him looking around and not having to have so much dialogue or so much exposition laid in so that it let the audience know exactly what was happening. But at least we could at least have this moment where we were just figuring out what was going on through his mind or how his mind works. And it's funny you mentioned that about the voice, because early on when they were filming, apparently he went a little overboard with it and he did something that was similar to Bale's voice as Batman in The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Return and The Dark Knight Rises. So I know it was like when they went back into production, post-production, when he was doing ADR, that's when he made it more nuanced and it did something that was a little bit, they had told him like, hey, just don't try too hard. And I think that was the whole thing with Bale too, where he was just exaggerating and overdoing it, trying to sound intimidating, trying too hard to be that Batman as opposed to just letting it come naturally. So I really thought it was a nuanced approach to his voice and something that works to where it's not so gravelly and you can understand him and you can comprehend what he's saying, but that he should just naturally come out very intimidating just because it's his persona. And I really liked one of the scenes that was so Batman to me was when he's meeting up with Catwoman and she's putting in the contact lenses and she's all like, why do I feel like a fish on a hook here? You really don't care about me, do you? And he has that moment where he looks at her and you see her in her eyes and she's thinking he's being genuine. I was going to be like, Selena, I care about you. And you even see him going like this. He's like, they look good. I'm like, that's so Batman.
I also think this Batman has a sense of humor, even though it's not like overt and he seems like a sad boy. And maybe it's just because who I saw it with, but the moment where he peeks his head in at the Penguin when the car's flipped over really, really, really slow, hello, is, I think that's meant to be humorous because I noticed a lot of people thought that was funny. And also the moment where the cop is trying to ask him questions and he just shines like a flashlight in his face, not saying anything and stuff like that. So I think there's really cool little subtle moments of humor. Nothing like too over the top, but little subtle things that are still there.
I feel you on that.
Well, I mean, Gordon has a lot of moments of humor too, so that's also. But overall, I was not really somebody that was criticizing this choice. I think the only thing, just because of that connection between Twilight, but obviously with his independent films and all the other films that he had done ever since Twilight, you could tell he's a really good actor, and that there was definitely a reason that he was chosen, or that him being the front runner at the beginning. When he was doing screen tests with Nicholas Hoult, you knew that there was an idea and there was a vision. There was a reason why Matt Reeves really wanted him on board. So I think a lot of those things, a lot of those nuances in his performance, he definitely shined through. I can't wait to see more of him. And speaking on from that, one of the best things I really liked about this movie was a lot of the relationships. Batman and Catwoman, Batman and Gordon, Bruce and Alfred. What did you guys think about all these relationships, and what was the best one to you?
Well, I'll tell you the weakest one. And it's not that it's not weak, it's just it's compared to if a criticism as a Batman fan, I guess the connection between Bruce and Alfred doesn't seem very strong until the moment that he's kind of in the hospital. And that is a touching moment, but he's a much colder version of like their relationship. And I imagine, again, that could just because this is an early, so I imagine that they would develop it a little bit more. On the flip side of that, I think it has the best Gordon relationship. And I'm kind of shocked to say it because I love Gary Oldman as Commissioner Gordon. I think he nailed that role in the Dark Knight films in terms of the relationship he had with Batman, the way that they really trusted each other like partners. I was like, you're not going to top that. And I think this did it a little bit better. Not a whole lot, but a little bit, where I think it took the kind of relationship they had in those movies and pushed it a little bit further, where you could tell that Batman really sees Commissioner Gordon as his ally in the war on crime and vice versa, and the way that they kind of trust each other. Even though Gordon doesn't really know anything about who he actually is, he has that intuition to know that he's on the right side. And I kind of like their banter together. I think the two actors have good chemistry. I think there's a lot of funny lines, especially with Gordon, when things like Batman saying things like no guns. He's like, hey man, that's your thing. Or him laughing at the thumb drive, how the thumb is literally connected to a drive, and Gordon saying things like, oh, this guy's hilarious. I think they had a really good relationship. And I think that Jeffrey Wright really captured that the kind of gravitas of the Jim Gordon role. So I'd say that's the best relationship is between those two.
Definitely. What about you guys? What do you think, Eric?
I thought, I was actually gonna say, I don't know if you could consider it a relationship, but the moments when Penguin and Batman were on screen together, I think those worked really well, and it seemed very believable. So even from the very beginning, when Batman's like going through the club looking for him, and he finds him, and they're just sitting down talking, I felt like Penguin was being his like normal sarcastic self, and giving it back to Batman and almost not taking him seriously, and that's almost pushing Batman over the edge. And even later on in the right after the chase scene, or even like right before, they're yelling at each other, or Penguin's yelling, but after the chase scene, when they're going back and forth, and you find out that they were basically chasing the wrong lead, Gordon and Batman, and Penguin's just kind of laughing at them. And he's like, "You guys are idiots! Like, really,
World's greatest detectives," he says.
Right? Yeah." And he starts laughing at them for it, and that was so in line with Penguin, and I think that actually showed their relationship really well. How yes, he understands that Batman is this physical force, but at the same time, he's gonna commit to what he's doing, and it's not gonna stop him. So I thought they played that really well too, and I almost felt like the relationship between Penguin and Batman was a lot more interesting to me than the one between Batman and Riddler.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I thought, and obviously Tom Farrell as Penguin, he killed that role.
What about you, Ruben?
And me, and honestly, I'm not gonna have a favorite because I mean, to me, it's nothing new. You know, Batman's always gonna be tight with Gordon, and then he's always have a connection with his villains. You know, because even when they're not fighting, and like Eric says, whenever they're communicating, having to talk face to face, it just seems so casual on both ends. But if I had to choose one, I would have to be, yeah, it would have to be with Detective Gordon, just because throughout the whole film we already know that's who Batman was siding with from beginning to end. That's exactly the whole way it was. They were like best friends. It's like he already knew who Batman was, but he doesn't know who it is.
Yeah.
That's how I felt, at least. So I would go, yeah, Detective Gordon. I did like the relationship he had with Selena, but I would have to go with Gordon.
Really, I did it. Like, I felt like they forced it so
That was
much, and I don't, it wasn't believable to me. It was weird.
No, the communicate the how would you say that the communications they had between each other, like Eddie was saying, it sounded cheesy and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But I felt like they understood each other. That's why I liked it.
Okay.
Just because they understand each other from each aspect. Like, he knows she's a robber. She does stuff but she has a reasoning for it. And then Batman obviously has his reasoning for doing everything too.
Yeah.
That's the reason why I like their relationship.
What about you, Eddie?
The best one, man, I gotta go with Eric, Penguin and Batman. And I agree with him again with the Riddler and Batman sake, because that Ave Maria in that jail cell scene.
Yeah.
That was rough, man. That was awkward. I felt awkward for Batman in that scene. I was like, damn.
You should feel awkward in that scene, though.
I think that's the emotions that they're evoking.
I felt like they were trying to go for creepy and missed
They
the
were,
mark.
yeah, they missed it.
Okay.
I mean, I think it's just more so the Riddler's damage. Obviously, being everything that he's gone through in his life, there is a bit of a psychological illness with him. So I took it more as that.
There's got to be a better way to showcase craziness than just having them break out in song. Like, this isn't the 80s movies anymore. I remember that's how they always showed crazy.
They hinting at that from the very beginning, though. Like, we saw that in the very beginning and went with the score. I think it was something like it was to be expected, or it was something that they were leading us to.
Yeah.
All right, that's something. All right, the Paul Dano thing as the Riddler, that's something I have to strongly push back on, and only because in film circles I'll get attacked for not defending Paul Dano's performance on this. That actor was picked for a very specific reason. He specializes in these types of characters, and as far as his like singing Ave Maria and all this stuff, it's very uncomfortable. But if you look at interviews with serial killers, and especially if you ever watch the show Mindhunter, which is based on real interviews with serial killers, that's very much a big influence on what this is. So if you ever watch interviews with like Jeffrey Dahmer or Charles Manson, they're full of themselves. They are delusional. They have these wild delusions of grandeur, and then they go off on these wild tangents where they start singing, they start like maniacally laughing and acting over the top.
Yeah, and some of that's dope. Well, most of it's dope, but that was just weird.
Yeah.
Like, how he did it was just weird.
And nothing against the actor. Like, I think he did a great job as the Riddler until he took off the mask.
Yeah.
I thought the whole scene in the prison cell was even weird. Like the whole time where he keeps saying Bruce Wayne and Batman thinks it's him and then he realizes it's not talking about him is like, again, I think that just shows kind of like the break in that relationship, really, where they're not on the same page. But even then, it's just like, okay, I felt like that scene in itself too dragged on a lot. I think that scene could have been cut short a bit because we already understood the Riddler by that point. I think we already understood what he was doing.
They're really trying to have a point home, yeah, and it wasn't like.
I think that was more. I feel like that was just more that connection. Like Batman is thinking you're crazy, you're psychotic, and he's like, "Whoa, you're part of this too. Like I'm inspired by you. It was because of you." That I think it's forcing him to confront that feeling on: did I help create this? Was I the reason that enacted this man to put his plans into motion? So I think it's more from that perspective of
I understand
confronting that feeling.
I understand that and the importance of having that scene to move the plot forward. That's why I said we shouldn't just take out the scene. But I think we were already sold on Riddler's craziness. We didn't have to be sold on it even more. And I think it almost like pushed over a little too much for me.
I mean, on the same token, I get some of these criticisms, but some of these are criticisms that you could kind of apply to almost anything. So in The Dark Knight, by the time we sit down and have an interrogation with the Joker, he's already established how crazy he is.
What he wants.
What he wants. So I guess it doesn't need to be there, but
it felt authentic. Even when he got beat, it was authentic. Like I felt like this was just forced to be awkward.
But yeah, it is a little bit awkward, but also, so he's inspired by serial killers and also internet incel killers, like especially in the way that he radicalizes kind of people online. I don't know if you guys know who Elliot Rodger is. Fuck that guy, don't look him up. But he was actually.
Now I have to look it up.
I know, right?
So he was.
He
was an incel shooter, an incel killer that went off on a spree, and then inspired a bunch of other incels online to like pick up weapons and go out and attack. So before he killed 5 people out of college, he uploaded this video, and it really actually comes across a lot like Paul Dano's Riddler. He's crying about the world has ignored him, about how he's gonna strike back, about how he feels important. He looks dweeby. He's really pathetic, and it's really, really awkward and uncomfortable to watch his video and his laughing about how he's going to go out and kill a bunch of people. I think that what makes this performance work for me is it's probably the most realistic villain performance I've seen in a superhero movie. I think it's more realistic than Heath Ledger's Joker. It's not as good as Heath Ledger's Joker. No, realistic. I didn't say as good. The performance
I heard.
That's two different
I heard you.
Yeah. Heath Ledger's Joker is an icon. He's cool. He has flair. He has style. Most villains or bad people in real life are not actually cool. They're not people that you're going to quote and put posters up or wear shirts of. This comes closer to what real evil is actually like. Sad, pathetic, uncomfortable, and awkward. Now, I get that's a strange choice and it's not going to work for anybody. It's not going to work for everyone, and I get why people might not like it or may be made uncomfortable by it, but I think it works for the specific story that this is telling, where it's going for a more realistic serial killer incel type of Riddler.
Yeah. I mean, it could be that just by that point in the movie, I was already like 2 hours in. I was like getting over it, and like there's this whole interrogation. But no, I get what you mean. That actually makes a lot of sense, because that's what they were going for, right? That's what Matt Reeves was going for, a more realistic take on the superhero genre.
I mean, he was aiming at Batman though. Joker was aiming at a whole city, but teaching someone something though. Even the whole scene with the boat, where he was telling them to decide, are you gonna pick like to destroy the other boat or not? Yeah. I feel like he was teaching more than Riddler was.
By the way, I don't think he's better than Heath Ledger's Joker. I think it's more realistic. Nothing is ever going to top Heath Ledger's Joker in my book. That's
Ever.
You don't think Heath Ledger was realistic with
I don't think so either.
Not that I don't think his performance was realistic. I think the way that he's written is written to be kind of cool and iconic and a little flashy, more like a comic book villain. I think he has that realism there, but he has like a certain kind of coolness or a swagger to him. Whereas I think this is more realistic because most killers in real life are not cool like that. They're more awkward, uncomfortable, and pathetic.
But a lot of them go on sprees, on killing sprees, like the Joker kind of do, blowing up a hospital and everything. It was very believable.
Most of those guys, I
don't think it's believable. I don't think we'll ever see a person in real life do what Heath Ledger's Joker did. But I could see someone strapping up bombs and trying to kill people and stuff for the reasons that Paul Dano's Riddler did.
Yeah. And it also makes sense that people online would be radicalized by him because we live in an era when that happens, there's like people who romanticize it. So it makes sense that on the dark web, he would have a certain amount of followers and people who would be ready to go out and carry and commit violence out there.
Oh, for sure, most definitely.
Yeah. Whereas Heath Ledger's Jokers, his clowns just appear out of nowhere. They just keep following him.
Yeah, dude, it's some what's called V for Vendetta kind of style stuff.
But the way he did it was cool too, because he kept telling them, "Oh, I'm gonna break you off. I'm gonna break you off. Don't say nothing." And they had to take each other out. And then
I don't think you're gonna convince us otherwise, Eddie.
People are
stupid, bro.
when I agree with Jimmy though, when we say Heath Ledger's Joker is like one of the best, don't forget it. We do know his action scenes may not be believable, but the insanity wise, the way he talks, that freaking lip smacking, all that stuff, like dude, it's like he portrayed it legit, dude. Like he portrayed it legit. Well, he was a crazy dude kind of.
No, that's
Other than that,
one of the best things about we had talked about it a little bit, but one of the best things that this film had going for it was a lot of the performances were up to par and were very fitting of the characters. So which one was a standout for you?
Performance wise?
Yeah.
I'll go back to the Penguin for me. Colin Farrell. Yeah, I think Eddie's the same thing. Yeah. I already explained why.
Everybody I talk to, they're like, no way that's Colin Farrell. I'm like, go look it up, dude.
And I'm so excited that he's getting his own series. That's going to be dope.
Yeah, it's going to be cool.
I mean, to be honest,
that is
I couldn't tell that was Colin.
Yeah, neither could I.
Yeah.
I can't even
if you really look at it, I believe it. I do believe it's him. It's just in a fat suit. Like, I did see it. When I looked at him, I was like, it really is this guy. But, like, the way they made it portray him, it's like they did so good of a job on it. It's like, I understand where it's like, okay, he doesn't look like him, but it's like you guys, it's all in the eyes, Chico. It's all in the eyes.
It's all nice.
That Scarface line.
For me, I liked all of the performances. I would still, for me, it would go with Pattinson just because I really love what he did with Batman. I love his voice and I love his most of his facial expressions, and I like the way that he kind of projected intelligence and you could see the wheels turning whenever he was examining a crime scene. So I'm going to go with him, though. Jeffrey Wright as Gordon is pretty close.
Yeah,
I think there were every performance in here was memorable and I think very fitting for the character. Probably have to go with Pattinson for that same reason, just for that fact. This movie was really hanging on the balance of his performance and was really going to be key factor in the success of the movie was just how good his performance was going to be. I think everybody did well. Paul Dano was great, and especially having to act, you didn't get to see him until literally till the end, and he had to act just through like cell phone video and a lot of those clips and everything, which is very hard to do in a distorted voice. So I thought that was all really well. We didn't get to see so much of Alfred. I really liked Alfred, and I thought that was a different thing that they were going. He never referred to him as Master Bruce, which is not something that we're used to in media. And I think it was because it was taking more of that inspiration from Earth 1 Alfred, where he is not a butler. He was a former Royal Marine who was called upon by Thomas Wayne to be his head of security when he was running for mayor. And then when the murder happened, he actually left guardianship to Alfred. So Alfred introduced him as a butler, but Alfred was more like rough around the edges because he was this badass Royal Marine, and a lot of his training from Bruce's training came from Alfred. So, and I think we got a little bit of a nod of that when the hospital, when he said, you know, I didn't know how to take care of you. I can teach you to fight, but I didn't know the first thing about being a father. I thought that was alluding, and then him with the cane, I thought maybe he was injured during the wartime, so that was further alluding to the fact that he was a Royal Marine and the fact he wasn't, seemed like he was a butler, never referred to him as Master Bruce, but there was definitely that care and that relationship about a father. They just didn't exactly know how, that father and son relationship, didn't know how to express it. Bruce being very, I thought that was all done very well. We didn't get to see so much of it, and I want them to become a little bit more caring towards each other. Well, more so Bruce in the future. You guys said you didn't really like Selena Kyle. You guys didn't really like Zoe Kravitz, or wasn't believable.
No, I did. Remember, I said that was probably my second.
I know, like Eric and Eddie said.
I think
like
it was
Zoe
just
Kravitz.
yeah. I was gonna say I
didn't
like
like-
Zoe Kravitz.
It's just her relationship to Batman. You were saying.
Yeah, I think
like
she
this.
did what was on paper.
Right.
I think she portrayed what was given to her. I just don't think the character was written that well. Like
Understandable.
honestly, I
you
feel
on.
like Anne Hathaway's Selena Kyle was better.
Yeah.
Oh no. Okay,
Yeah, I
had. But
They both
I don't-
sexy, though. I'll give you that. And that bat and that cat suit, they look.
All right, that's the only thing
you
I'm
guys even bought that scene, Jimmy, where she called Falcone dad?
Yes.
I know you didn't buy that scene. Oh,
I bought it, but I thought it was
why didn't you buy it? Yeah, what was it about?
But that is her dad, though. That's part
I
of
know,
It is.
I know it is, but the way
comic.
you said it,
I don't think.
So
there's-
I had friends that didn't know Selena Kyle was there, that Falcone was, and a few of them were like, "Oh, that's weird. It was kind of unnecessary," and
Yeah, it was
that's how
forced.
I felt about it too. And I remember you guys told me that, and it's revealed in Long Halloween that Falcone's her dad. But coming from people that don't know that, when I saw that on film, I was like, really? Like, it has to be her dad? And it almost didn't feel believable to me. It was like, it was more of a plot point that they just
I
threw
feel
in there
like
to
this is
sell
all
it.
an origin story for everybody. Not
Okay,
just
let's-
Batman, but for
Yeah.
everybody.
Yeah, it
the
was.
villains
That's how it
moving
was.
forward. And then that's why I'm saying this movie is just the foundation, and it has potential to grow. And moving forward, it has these chances for us to get intrigued even.
It did do good world building. I'll give you that.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Well,
did.
what
I felt
was it about that you guys didn't feel that you guys felt it was just too convenient, or that they just threw it
I
out
felt
there
like-
just because? Why would it not feel believable?
I felt like the producers, like all her little outfits, I felt like the producers knew she was hot, and they knew how excited.
that woman should be
all
hot.
these- yeah, but they knew, and they like exploited it. They knew how excited a lot of these guys were gonna get.
I
Like,
mean, she's
so-
a waitress, though. Waitresses are supposed to dress sexy.
Yeah, with 30 wigs though. Come on,
But
now.
no, but wait. That's also part of the comics. She has a lot of different.
Yeah, it has different phases. Yeah.
So that's
Yeah, but-
totally comic book accurate.
Yeah, but
What I
portraying
was missing, what I
Go
was
ahead.
missing in Catwoman was like the mystery and the elegance. That's what I
Her
was
mystery
missing
was
in this
in the
movie.
beginning, and then like the first cup when Batman first or whoever was tracking her in the beginning, it felt
Yeah.
like that was her style, being sneaky. But then after that, moving forward, it felt like
Yeah, it
this
felt
is
like
not the comic style Selena that we know.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. For a whole part of the movie, I felt like she thought she needed Batman, and I don't like that. I don't like that she felt like she needed Batman to help her. Like, you need to help me. You need to help
That's
me
why-
solve this case.
Yeah, that's where I felt that.
What would make more sense is like, I'm gonna solve this case no matter what, and you do your own thing. If we cross paths,
Yeah.
so be it.
I mean, she
And
was
I know
asking
she
him
did
for
that
help.
at times. I know, like when she was following Penguin and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there is literally a scene where she's like, "You need to help me with this.
She said, "Are you gonna help me?"
Are you
He
gonna
said,
help me?"
You need to help me. She said, "Are you gonna help me?"
Yeah,
Yeah,
but,
that's what she
She said,
said.
but
I'm gonna
even
do
then-
it anyways,
begging.
but I would like your
Yeah.
help, your assistance.
But
But the way
again, what I
he
was
hurt
missing
people
there
too.
was kind of like the mystery. Again, this is from the animated series, the Catwoman for the animated series. That
Yeah.
I see a lot of mystery and elegance
Yeah.
in Catwoman that I didn't
But I mean,
really get.
also,
the
I
same
think that's
sense
an
here.
unfair criticism, though, just because this is a Catwoman who hasn't come into her own as like Batman's just starting off, who isn't exactly
The
sure.
origin
Like her whole
story.
thing was just a score to her, and because Falcone owes her that money because that's her father. So
Yeah.
I think it was more from that, like her not understanding who she is, or what it is that she wants to do or how to go about that in the best way. Just someone who was looking at this as a score and nothing more. So I don't think that elegance is going to be there from the very beginning.
I get why you might miss the elegance, but I think it also depends on what version of Catwoman we're talking about, because there is a version of Selena Kyle, and I think that's the more common interpretation, is the elegant one, more of a high society version. It's kind of what they do in the animated series, and it's what they try to do in The Dark Knight Rises. But this is based more on the Batman Year One Catwoman, where she's more of a street level person who works with like prostitutes and other girls. And even the way that she's dressed, some of her outfits in this are directly taken out of Batman Year One. Even the way that she looks, even in Batman.
Oh, wait, yeah, her
Year One,
whole physical
they made
look
her
definitely looks.
Yeah, a black Catwoman with short hair. Like if you put some of her outfits and the way that she's dressed or the way that she looks with her hair like that next to some of the comic book panels from Batman Year One, it looks like it was ripped straight out of that. And I think they go a long way to try to make it like that version of Selena Kyle.
I don't know if my bad, Eddie. I don't mean to interrupt you. But I don't know if you guys caught this, but I think one of the big reasons she was casted, at least to me, is her eyes, because her eyes kind of look like a cat. Like the way that they're angled, they look like a cat to me. I like the minute when that first shot you see her where the camera pans up and she looks at Batman. You can see like her eyes kind of look like a cat. I don't know if that was just me, but
I think that was.
I think
she's beautiful, bro. She's a beautiful child.
Yeah, she's beautiful.
Yeah.
So so I'm saying I think her performance was fine. I'm not happy with how Catwoman was written in this movie.
Yeah,
I agree on that.
But I mean, it is possible. It is possible that Selena Kyle will become. I'm not saying that. I don't know what their plans are, so I can't say for sure. But it kind of suggests that Selena Kyle is going off to off on her own to try to become her own
Bloodhaven.
Bloodhaven. I actually think by the time she returns, she's probably going to be a little bit more elegant and high society. And also, this isn't even fully Catwoman yet. I didn't know that when I was watching it, but I was doing after that. This is just the start of Catwoman. She hasn't officially made a persona. The idea is in the sequels they're going to give her like the goggles, like the
the goggles
after she comes back.
She was just more upfront than what I was like I'm used to. She was like, even that scene in the bar when she was getting the information and stuff, it was just a little more upfront than
and where she like got drawn away because like I need to go this way because I need to find my friend.
I
told you I'm here for my.
I get it because it's not like the typical like what you typically expect from Catwoman. It's not the most common interpretation, but it is faithful to a certain type of Catwoman. And it depends on what source you're pulling from.
Yeah, but even with the outfits, like you could update them. Like even with like WandaVision, like they try to stay, connected to the comics. They just updated it. You could do that, but I feel like they didn't even try to do that right here.
Yeah,
I'll just keep repeating myself. It's just the foundation. They laid it, and they're gonna grow from there, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, hopefully it's good.
But every performance was awesome. But every performance is awesome. Every actor definitely fit their roles. Jeffrey Wright was awesome as Gordon. Definitely cool to see that.
You like Falcone, Nick?
What? John Turturro? Yeah, he was awesome as Falcone.
John Turturro
is a great actor.
John Turturro is a great actor. No.
It was. What? I mean, I'd rather prefer this than a Batman Begins where he has to flash a gun and say, I wouldn't have that second hesitation. This is definitely a more nuanced, a character who doesn't have to flaunt his intimidation.
I actually thought he was pretty creepy in the way that
he was very creepy.
I think he's really creepy. Also, with John Turturro, because he has a certain calmness about him. He doesn't have to try to be intimidating.
He looked creepy in like a pedophile sort of way.
Yeah, I know. I was like, what? It's creepy.
That's how I saw it.
For me, also. All right. Also, John Turturro, to me, like that's such an incredible actor. I'm just glad that for once we actually get to see him in a blockbuster movie, not directed by Michael Bay, where he actually gets to play a character.
Where you don't have to see his ass, because why is that a thing? I don't know. It shouldn't be a thing, but I know that was Eddie's probably favorite part of Transformers, probably.
No, I'm totally part for sure.
Oh, of course. But every performance is awesome. Can't wait to see more. One of the biggest highlights of this movie, though, was the cinematography. Because one of the coolest things was the guy who worked on the cinematography was Greg Fraser, who did Dune. He did a few episodes of The Mandalorian. He also did Killing Them Softly. He did Vice. He was definitely one of the standouts. The look of Gotham, the shot selection, all of that. Let's start with Jimmy first. What was it that made the cinematography stand out and so different in your opinion, and push this movie to another tier?
Okay, this is what pushes the movie as a piece of filmmaking above a lot of other superhero movies. And I'm pretty sure Greg Fraser, he's nominated for an Oscar right now for Dune. I'm pretty sure he's going to get another nomination for Best Cinematography for this one.
Easily.
The level of detail that you see him put into the shots and the compositions and the lighting and the different techniques that they play with. And I actually got to see some behind the scenes stuff where they actually show how they set the shots up and some interviews with him. This is like the type of detail into cinematography and into filmmaking that is really, really rare these days. It's even more rare in blockbuster movies. To get this level of cinematography, you have to go to independent art films to get stuff like this. And I don't mean this to beat up on the MCU because I love the MCU, but my biggest criticism of them is that all of the directors they hire, it doesn't really matter what directors they hire, because none of the directors, except for maybe James Gunn and Taika Waititi, none of them have ever put their own spin on the material. And even when you watch some of the behind the scenes, when they're filming it, the shots are very simple. Most of it's behind a blue screen, and it's just simple shot setup. Everything is perfectly lit. Everything is sharp. And I guess it's professional, but it's not very creative. I think it loses a lot of the elements that make filmmaking so different than television, or it makes it like kind of separates it as an art form. This one actually uses the color palette of the movie to comment on the themes of the film. At the beginning of the movie, I love the way that they use the color red. They kind of started off with, like, when you're making a film, you usually try to start off with like a color belt to determine what your movie's going to look like and to see what the primary colors are. They took a color that you don't typically associate with Batman, as red, and they used it in a really good way. Red is usually used to represent fear or anxiety. If it's used in a movie, it's put there for a specific reason. There's a reason in people's houses you don't see any rooms that are decorated all red or that are painted all red. It would probably give you would?
I had one.
Oh yeah, but that's not a common thing. It's usually preferred that you go for like more cool or calming colors.
Blue.
Yeah, like blues or something like that. I like that at the beginning of this movie when Batman appears, it's always with the color red, and it kind of represents danger or some kind of impending doom. By the end of the movie, the color red transforms with Batman's character arc. At the beginning of the movie, where he's just vengeance and he's just a brutal vigilante, by the end, the color red is used is when he's guiding people out of light, guiding people out of the water. And that's such a beautiful shot, the overhead shot of Batman holding the light, and and everybody following him into the red and out into the sunlight. So from the beginning of the movie, red is meant to represent anger and danger, and by the end, it's meant to represent hope. And I kind of like how they took that color and flipped it and used it to comment on his stuff, on Batman, in a different kind of way. Also, I love the things that they do with the shadows in this movie. A lot of it was inspired by like Halloween, like especially the way that Michael Myers materializes out of black backgrounds in the original Halloween. You see the same sort of thing kind of happening here with Batman when he appears. You see nothing but deep pools of black as street level criminals keep staring and staring, and then he kind of slowly emerges out of it. The shots that they do, the shot selection, like having him walk with the boots very slowly. I also think that's kind of reminiscent of Westerns, like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, or something like that, the kind of shots. And if you listen closely, they even put like a slight effect that sounds like a spur jingle to kind of give you like that kind of feeling of when he's approaching. The way that they shot this on film, and even like when you see Jeffrey Wright behind the scenes talking about how he was stunned at the cinematography and what they were doing on set. He was saying that he'd never seen any of the guys work like that on a film, where each shot, he's described them as the two of them working together, Matt Reeves and Greg Fraser, are almost like painters. every little thing is thought out to an extreme detail in a way that you don't see in movies too often anymore. It used to be a common thing in movies to have that level of detail. It's not really so much anymore. But he's talking about how they almost look like paintings, and it's almost every single shot in this movie, not everyone, but most of them are things that you could remove and hang up as a painting or a frame. So many different icons with this overhead shot, Batman walking upside down, the stuff from the skylights. The way that they shoot Gotham too is really creative because Gotham is made more claustrophobic by the way it's shot. They only shoot it above a certain eye line, so you never really get to see the sky. So it makes the city look very imposing, like it might choke you or strangle you or just kind of like eat you up alive. So there's so many different creative things that they do with the cinematography that I really, really loved what they did. Like, it's so rare. And this is what I want to see more of in superhero filmmaking, particularly because super films and comic books are very similar art forms. They're both based on visuals. And what's one of the cool things about comics is how every comic book artist comes on and puts a different spin on all of these characters and makes them look unique, kind of filters them through their own sensibility. Too many superhero movies today look the same, and they're not going for something like that. So this is what I want to see more of. I want to see filmmakers with their own perspective kind of put this level of detail and treat it like you would an artist would treat a comic book panel. And that's something that, for me, as somebody who's a fan of filmmaking and cinematography, kind of pushes it over. And I even love Christopher Nolan's cinematography in the Dark Knight trilogy, but I think this is a little bit more detailed and a little bit lusher.
Yeah. But for me, this is definitely probably the best looking Gotham has ever looked, where it feels like a combination of Burton's design with the whole Gothic architecture and Nolan's modern realistic take. So it feels like those two were blended, like when you would see just in the very beginning driving through Gotham and around and all like the neon lights, but yet it still feels very decadent, very grimy, very dirty, and all the shadows everywhere. I think they did a good job just with creating the look and the scope of Gotham as a whole. But what did you guys think about the cinematography, Eric?
I thought it was really good. I considered it almost like an art house type film. And I don't think we've gotten something like that, like you were saying, in a superhero movie, maybe since Joker. I think that's the last one I really saw that you can really tell they're going for the art of it and not just to tell a story. Me being a music guy, I really loved what they did with the audio in this movie. Even sitting in the theater, like you would hear certain things behind you and that made sense in the film. It wasn't just surround sound just for the sake of surround sound. I think they did a really good job with the sound design. The music themes, like Batman's theme, I thought that was really cool. And yes, it almost sounds like the Imperial March from Star Wars, but it's actually that Nirvana song, Something in the Way, that you hear in the commercials and also early on in the movie.
At the end of the movie too?
Yeah. Oh yeah. And at the end of the movie, you hear that song starts off with the guitar and it's actually just pitched down and slowed down. And you hear the like dun dun. And every time they actually play the Batman theme, it's slightly different. And it's almost like at first it's just like a lower like bass tones, and then as it progresses, there's more like horns added and strings. And it's almost like he's coming into his own as the film progresses, and not just a repetitive theme that keeps playing over and over. So I thought that was really cool because at first you kind of hear it, you're like, oh, that's cool. And then as you hear it throughout, you're like, okay, this is the theme and it's building. So, and it's at its like peak during the like stadium scene, right? Where he's like really going at everyone. I thought that was really cool. The Riddler's theme also, it's the Ave Maria pitched up, I think, and like slowed down. And I thought that was cool. As much as I didn't like the Ave Maria scene myself, I thought it was really cool that they took that scene and they actually made it the theme for the Riddler, that song. And you can actually impose one song on top of the Batman theme. It actually works cohesively together. They're in the same key. So I thought that was really cool too. So it all kind of blends together and it makes sense. And yeah, from cinematography, well, I like what you said that you can take like a picture and a picture like at any point you can take a snapshot and that itself can be a poster. I definitely see that. And I definitely see how there's so many scenes where it just pans from like one character to the next and nothing is ever said, but everything is described in the motion, in their facial expressions. And that's kudos to the actors as well, but in large part that's due to the cinematography that's in place. So I think the cinematography used itself as almost like a plot device to move the plot forward, and it makes a lot of sense.
Before, I actually think that, you know how the stuff, I love the score of this, but I can't eloquently as describe it how you did. But I also think that the cinematography and the music kind of work together at the same time, that they both kind of advance the story along together, and are kind of both used to comment on the themes of the story and what's going on in it.
Mm.
I didn't know that was the Nirvana song.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Interesting.
Yeah, pretty cool. One of the coolest things that I learned that this film had done, and it's something that makes sense, is given that Greg Fraser was a cinematographer, because he also worked on a few episodes of The Mandalorian, and this is where this technology was created, or where it was first developed, was that the Batman used what's called the volume. It's essentially a combination of 20-foot tall LED panels that are unbelievably intelligent. It has the ability to render in real time in response to camera movement, and allows the constant correction of perspective, lighting, and other elements of the panels. So they used it mostly from The Mandalorian. That's why The Mandalorian looks as good as it does. And I feel, and this was mostly what they used for the skyline in the background, where they're near the bat signal, where they're meeting, like Catwoman and Batman meet there, and then Gordon and Batman meet there a few times. That was actually where it was used, and that was an artificial environment. That wasn't real.
I didn't notice that it wasn't real.
Yeah, that's not real. That's pretty cool, huh? You can't even tell.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Sure.
But, and I think it's cool that Jimmy talks about the color red, and obviously from the very first snippets we saw, any footage or any kind of information that was released on this film, we had seen that red was going to be a primary color for this film. And it definitely evokes me a lot of nostalgia, because of the whole Batman the Animated Series was actually painted on black, and you could see like a red skyline. So that's something that I immediately thought of as that connection to Batman the Animated Series. I felt like that was another influence with that. But one of the greatest shots for me was that shot of the Batmobile flying through the fire in that car chase with the Penguin, and then his car getting flipped over, and you see that upside down shot from the Penguin's perspective of Batman walking over with the rain and the fire in the background. That, I got to tell you, that's probably one of the most glorious shots you're ever going to see in a comic book film. Just with and Batman, the score, the triumphant Batman music, and Batman walking slow, and the Penguin just shriveling in fear, like that. I got to tell you, that's got to be probably one of the most awesome shots you're ever going to see in a superhero film.
What's cool about that is, most of the time when you're actually filming chase scenes or car chase scenes, you typically would go for a wider angle just so the audience could see everything, and that's more of the classical way. And they do some of the shots here, but I like that a lot of it's in rear view, and I like that the camera is placed directly in the Penguin's car when it's flipped over, so you actually get to see inside the car. It's a lot of those shots were chosen to put the viewer more into the chase, so you could feel the immediacy, as opposed to just watching it from the outside, kind of using the cinematography to do that. And really good stuff. And when Batman's walking towards him and that music's playing, that to me conveys the most Batman thing I've seen in a movie, where they always try to sell Batman as a frightening urban myth in every one. This is the one where I felt like the filmmaking actually kind of sold that every time he came out, the music and the cinematography and all the visuals and the sound design all came together to kind of really sell this vision of this larger than life urban creature. Even though this takes place in like a realistic settings, Batman is shot almost mythically, like he's so much more larger than life than a lot of the other characters. Whereas in most Batman movies, the villains are made to be a little bit larger than life, and you don't get that so much from Batman. So I really like that.
But even that first look we get of Batman, that's probably one of the best first looks we have at Batman, with him coming out of the footsteps, him coming out of the shadows, or it just feels so reminiscent of that. That is just so Batman.
Mm-hmm.
And even a lot of those first-person perspective shots, that was another interesting little thing that Matt Reeves had done. allowing us to see from Batman's perspective, like him walking in the very beginning to the crime scene with the mayor, and all of the GCPD looking at him like, well, what the heck is this guy doing here or something. I felt like that was just a little interesting thing that Matt Reeves had done. And the cinematography, it just speaks scales to a visionary and someone who has so much of it planned out on what he wants. And I don't know if it's so much so that it was just Greg Fraser, that Matt Reeves and Greg Fraser, that Matt just said, hey, this is what I want, this is what I need, and explaining it in such detail. And Greg is just like, okay, man, I got you. And just goes to show like what is really possible, especially in a comic book film, because you don't see this attention to detail. You don't even see like a lot of those natural elements popping up on the. They had talked a lot about that popping up when they were filming, and how a lot of modern comic book movies seem to be going for like a clean or pristine look, and this one definitely evokes those feelings of a 70s film. Or we talk about Chinatown a lot. We talk about the French Connection, and definitely having those kind of similar feelings to it. Then you see modern comic book films, and they're very clean looking, and they're afraid to get dirty. But again, this is Batman though, so I think that's a little bit different. But still, it just goes to show when you have somebody who understands what he wants and has those influences and those kind of connections, what is really possible from a filmmaking perspective and from an audience perspective. It's just so cool to see.
Yeah.
Yep.
So moving on from that, we want to get to wrapping up this episode now, but there's been a lot of talks about what's going to happen next, villains that we could see. Obviously, there was allusions and nods to Hush with that campaign for Thomas Wayne that the Riddler had mapped over where he wrote Hush. Obviously, that was a nod to Thomas Elliot. And then the reporter that was going to reveal that Martha was in Arkham to the press, his name was Edward Elliot. So obviously that was a further connection. Like he's got to be related to Thomas Elliot. And Matt Reeves had talked about doing Mr. Freeze, but I don't know how that would work because he talked about doing it grounded or more realistic. Don't know if you could really do that. Matt Reeves had also and Robert Pattinson has also talked about wanting to do the Court of Owls. That would be really cool to see. Obviously, tying into the connection of Gotham and the corruption, the Court of Owls is definitely an easy story that they could do that can translate very well. But what would you guys like to see? What villains do you feel would fit in with the world and the tone that the Batman and Matt Reeves has established?
Well, to make it quick, because I gotta head out really quick. I know, I think Eric does too. But I would like to see Ra's al Ghul. To be honest, I mean, I know they didn't give no glimpse of him or anything like that. But it is a character I would like to see just because of the fact that they do have history and they perpetrate each other so well. If you think about it, one's an evil version of Batman and one's legit Batman.
Yeah, I think obviously they're going to be showing Joker, right? They had him at the end of the movie, and unfortunately, like I think it's unfortunate that they had to put in the Joker. Like, can't we just get a Batman movie without the Joker? But they put him in anyway. He's there, and then we were just talking about this before this podcast. The new deleted scene with the Joker is there, and he does a decent job. Obviously, it's just one scene, and I thought it was good. I thought it was okay. But I think what they're kind of going with, especially since they announced the Arkham Asylum series that's going to come out, and both the Riddler and the Joker are in Arkham Asylum, I really hope that the series is with them. And I think it'd be really cool to see kind of their relationship. And I haven't read this comic book, but I know it exists. There's like this comic book where it's like Joker versus the Riddler, and they're like fighting for the heart of Gotham City, and basically everyone in crime needs to either go with one side or the other, and Batman's just kind of stuck in the middle. I think it'd be really interesting to see that play out either on a show or in film. I haven't read that comic book, but I think it's a really interesting idea. Other than that, there's so many Batman villains. I want to see something fresh, something new, or at least like, I don't know, do my girl Poison Ivy well.
Just have Uma Thurman come back, and she could definitely kill that role now for sure. I think
because I mean they saved Bane, right? When they did the Dark Knight series, I think they finally did Bane in a really cool way, but I haven't seen a good version of Poison Ivy done, and I think they kind of touched on it on the Gotham show, and yeah, it was very
somewhat.
little, but I wasn't.
I didn't
I was
like how
still
she was a little kid, and then they made her into like a grown woman.
all of
It
a
was
sudden,
like,
yeah,
what?
back
Like,
in the
no, I was
river.
like, this
Yeah.
felt wrong. I was like,
Yeah.
why? She's still a young girl. Like, no.
Yeah, it was so weird, but I think they can probably do her right. And again, just other than that, just give me a new villain. Give me something new, something that hasn't really been done the same way.
Yeah.
Maybe like I don't know if we've seen Clayface on
Clayface would
film.
be cool.
Yeah, so that'd be really cool. Give me Man-Bat. Give me like a monster.
Man-Bat, yeah.
Ooh, Man-Bat. Hey,
What-
Man-Bat soon come. I feel
what-
that for sure.
What about you, Eddie? Who would you like to see?
Mr. Freeze.
Mr. Freeze would be cool.
Yeah, because his story's pretty dark with what happened to his wife and everything that happened. So I feel like they could do a good version of him, and we haven't seen it since Arnold. So it'd be
Well,
pretty.
I liked him in the Flash series.
Oh yeah, well we seen him. You seen him a little bit in Gotham, but I mean I want to see him on the big screen. You know what I'm saying so. It'll be cool.
Okay, I feel you on
Yeah.
that.
What about you, Jimmy? Who would you like to see?
I kind of agree, Mr. Freeze. I don't know how they would do it, but I do think that there is a realistic way to do it and make it fit and still be Mr. Freeze. I don't know how you would do that, but I do
Yeah.
think that there is a way.
I heard a rumor it was old. No, go continue.
Yeah.
Continue.
But I would like to see the ventriloquist or
Yeah, that would be cool.
Scarface, which is
Oh,
that mob leader with that dummy who has two personalities.
Yeah,
Yeah.
dude, that
I
would
actually
be awesome.
I actually think that villain would fit in really well with
That'd be
this
cool.
world, with like the mafia penguin and
Yeah, like the mob. That whole mob thing that they got
That
going
would be
on, that can
awesome.
fit very well.
But I also think it's going to be the Court of Owls next, just because this movie starts off exploring Gotham's corruption and it only scratches the surface. So I'm pretty sure, and also because that's what Robert Pattinson wants to do.
Yeah.
That's his favorite storyline. So I think that's what's going to happen next. So I think it's going to be something with Mr. Freeze and the Court of Owls. I would like to see Scarface, but I don't know if that's actually in the cards.
Yeah. For me, my biggest villain I would really like to see is actually the Mad Hatter. I think the Mad Hatter could fit in very well, and a lot of his mind control technology isn't something to where it can be too fantastical that it doesn't fit in with the world that they've established. And mainly because I'm thinking of a Batman the Animated Series episode called Perchance to a Dream, where the Mad Hatter puts Batman into a dream state, in a hypnotic state, and his parents are alive, he's not Batman, and he's like trying to figure out what's going on, something's weird. And it just really goes to show Batman's intelligence and how he's able to see one thing is off, and he can just say, wait, this whole reality isn't real. So that just goes to show, that whole world's greatest detective and that observation skills of Batman. I really would like to see Clayface. He's really cool, one of my favorite Batman villains. I don't know how you could do him with this kind of environment. It would maybe have to be something to where it would have to be a little bit more realistic, or it really couldn't be as fantastical, which would kind of be a little bit of a letdown. He would have to water down a little bit, and I wouldn't want to see that. Hopefully we get to see, with the announcement that the new series they're working on is going to be based on Arkham, I think there's a good chance we could see Hugo Strange as one of the doctors there. I would really like to actually see Scarecrow. I think Scarecrow can fit very well with this world.
They're all good characters.
Yeah. Well, Scarecrow more because we haven't seen him as the main villain. He was more of a side villain in Batman Begins. And to do a kind of more creepy, terrifying, frightening version like we had seen in Batman Arkham Asylum, where in that his whole dynamic that he has in there and his role in that game would be really cool. So there's just so many great villains they could do. Poison Ivy would be cool. But
give me the Titans pothead Scarecrow.
Bro, all these characters, just like everyone y'all naming it, reminds me of Gotham, bro, the TV series. That's why I like the TV series, because it was like a foundation for that too, So anything we see moving forward is like, bro, these characters are awesome.
Yeah.
Do something with them.
Probably more so Mad Hatter, because we haven't seen him in a live action depiction yet, and I would just like to see.
Yeah, we did in Flash or
Gotham. Well, I meant live action movie. Live action movie.
Okay, live action movie. So. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and that's another cool villain a lot of people don't know is part of Batman's rogues. And I even think I was talking with somebody, and they were like, "Why are you talking about the Mad Hatter? Oh, he's a Batman character." And they were just like, "You mean the Lewis Carroll character?" Like, well, he was inspired by him. Yeah, but it's a whole thing. But yeah.
I can't bring Johnny Depp back for that character.
That'd be interesting. But so we're gonna rate the Batman now. It's a 9 out of 10 for me. Really liked it. Really enjoyed it. What about you, Eric? What do you rate it?
I went with an 8. I'm going with 8. Again, like I said, good movie, great movie. But for me personally, just because of my nostalgia for specific versions of Batman, I'm just gonna give it an 8.
Okay. I'll give it an 8.5. 8.5, just because of the fact that I do agree with, like, this is the best detective work in a Batman movie that we've seen. Action wise, believable, unbelievable on some frames, but yeah, 8.5 for me.
Cool. What about you, Eddie?
I really like the way it was shot. It didn't have to be that long for sure. So probably
definitely didn't have to be 3 damn hours.
Yeah, I thought Robert Pattinson was gonna turn into Twilight and shit. Fucking probably like 7.5.
Okay. Okay. What about you, Jimmy?
Oh, that's easy for me. I've seen it 3 times, so I can actually give my rare rating that I would give. I'm going to give this a 10 out of 10 just because this is my ideal Batman movie.
Yep.
This is what I've always wanted to see in a Batman movie.
Nice.
And because I think the filmmaking is spectacular. I don't think you see this level of craftsmanship in movies anymore.
Attention to detail, too.
Yeah. The only thing that would keep me back from the 10 is I don't like the Joker scene at the end. I think it's totally unnecessary.
Very.
Completely tacked on. And I also think if you took it out, it wouldn't affect the movie at all. It wouldn't affect the plot, the story.
Yeah,
and
they're setting something up.
I'm burnt out on the Joker. We've seen so many different great versions. I think we need to give it a rest and let him come in at the end of the series. But all I just want to say is, please don't make the Joker like a focus of anything for a very long time.
Please.
Yeah, definitely.
At least till the end.
So all those scores rounded up comes out to 9 out of 10. So make sure you guys go see it. That's Heroes and Mutants approved. So thank you guys so much. Did we all agree, right? 9 out of 10?
Sure.
I don't know if that's
whatever it is, but yeah.
The math is a little wrong, but it's okay.
Make sure you guys go see the Batman. It's still playing, or you could wait till it comes out on HBO Max sometime in mid-April. But that's our take on it. Go see it. So thank you guys so much for joining us today. This is the Heroes and Mutants podcast. Follow us on IG at Heroes and Mutants podcast. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, share with your friends. Big shout out and huge thanks to our producer Eddie for joining us today. We appreciate your presence, brother. We'll see you next time. Nerds signing off.
See ya.